What is up, everyone? It is Drew from the Sober Fix podcast. We got Mark Kneebone from Steel City Roundtable podcast. Check out Mark's new system. Look at that. Mark, it looks
Pittsburgh
amazing, man.
representing, baby. Pittsburgh representing.
Tell us how you did that because I'm sure anyone listening would love to hear how you get that stuff on point.
Well, you don't see the rest of the room. That's a total disaster right now. But so we bought a new house, right, Drew? And when we bought the house, it had two extra bedrooms, and they got low ceilings. They're shaped like this. So I was like, I got to make a studio in there. So I spent like 10 hours this week putting up 12 by 12 inch, 1 inch thick foam tiles that had five little circular stickers on the back that you peel the back off of, right? So I did like that. And then the TV, believe it or not, the chick that lived here before us left the TV behind. So all I'm doing is using my Mac and I'm doing screen mirroring with a Roku TV, which you can pretty much do with any smart TV. And it just mirrors your screen. So there you go. That's simple.
That's amazing, man. I told you earlier some of the problems I was having. I had an 85-inch TV, which was way big. It looked
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
insane. It looked like this monstrous thing that was above me that had lights beaming off of it, and I set it all up when we moved and I was excited to kind of set up my little area in the room. And sure enough, I turned it on the first time, all good. A week later, I go to record. I was going to do the same thing. I'm going to mirror this. It's going to look great on this big ass TV. Boom, broken all the way
Oh,
across
dude.
the bottom, messed up on the right side, messed up. I was like, you know what? It was too big anyway. Screw it.
I'll tell
So
you what, anybody who's doing this stuff is trying to do a podcast knows exactly what we're talking about. Like, you put all this money into shit and then you realize you bought the wrong crap, right? Like, oh, I
yeah.
got these cameras and they suck. Or, hey, I got this mixer and it sucks. Or, hey, I got this and I got that and it doesn't work. Like it's trial and error repeatedly. It's always tweaking everything. You're never happy with what you have.
No, the second you get things good to where you thought a month ago you wanted to get them to, then it's you check out someone else's podcast. You're like, man, I want those fucking lights, or I need to do this or that. You know,
Yeah, I reached out to a guy I know. His name's Jake Miklo. He owns True Believer Jiu Jitsu in Pittsburgh, and he's also in a band. He's in like a hardcore band, and I asked him to put together an intro for me. So I'm waiting to see what they can come up with because everybody wants their money, right? So if you put somebody's song on there, you're going to get copyright infringement, and somebody's going to come after you for $3.50. You know,
yeah,
so yeah, that's the next step is getting a good intro music to wind this thing up in the beginning.
yeah, man. And I know that you've just been moving and stuff. How's that been going?
If you want the perfect combination for a relapse, it's 60 hours a week at work, trying to do a podcast. I hate this thing, not sleeping, and then trying to organize your house and being stressed out about the bills and where's everything's. It's literally the perfect recipe for me to relapse, and I didn't. And that is mainly because I have the most awesome girlfriend in the world, and she helps ground me. She deals with my manic mood swings and tells me I'm being an ass when I'm being an ass, and we're finally almost done. Now we're just waiting for all the first bills to come in.
Yeah, the shock of the first bills. That's
Man,
cool, man.
yeah, it's nice having a house again. I haven't had a house since I got divorced in 2020, so it's nice to be back in my own space. Where, like, especially having the studio now. I had a guy in here last week. His name's Tony Moreno. He is running for mayor in the city of Pittsburgh. He's also a former Pittsburgh police officer, 20 plus years as a police officer slash detective. And we're going to put some fire out here on Wednesday. It's going to be pretty cool.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm sure that guy's got some stories. 20
Dude,
years.
I've
Check.
known it, dude. He trained me in the academy. I've known him since 2007. So we know all the same people, and we kind of like took the gloves off this time. So, hey, if you're a Pittsburgh City police officer and you get butt hurt, I don't care.
Sorry now.
Yeah, switch the channel. Go watch something else. But how are you? How's your week going, brother?
Good, man. Everything's been solid. It's funny as you're talking, I could totally relate to that because I remember when I was in addiction and I just wanted some kind of change. I was so desperate for something new. My life was going down the tubes for 14 years and I just wished that I could have somewhat of a normal life. And then when I finally got sober and things started to change, what happens for me? All of a sudden, I stress hits me, and all of a sudden, these things that I wanted in life are tripping me out. So it's been blessings, man. It's kind of the same thing, going back to school, working all the time, trying to squeeze in an episode each week, which is funny because when I first started doing podcasts, you think, okay, I'm going to sign up on Spotify or whatever. And you make a podcast and bam, it gets thrown out to the world and thousands of people start listening to it and stuff like that. And came to find out that it's actually a lot more work than anticipated,
You know, yeah, yeah. I did it backwards. A lot of if you notice a lot of the podcasts now, they build their brand first. They do a lot of influencing and TikTok videos and stuff like that to try to get their name out there. And once they get a bunch of people, then they come out with the podcast. Like I did it completely backwards. I was a, anti-social media guy. Like I wasn't on social media. And then I have to get on there to promote this thing. And it's like, I think my last episode got like 18 views and I'm just sitting there like, this sucks. Like I'm smashing my head against the wall, and like I said before, people don't understand like what goes into this when you're just a schmuck on the street trying to make a podcast. We
Yeah.
have no financial support. We have no, studio to record in. We don't have anybody paying us to do this. Like we take our own time out of the day to do this because it's what we want to do. And I think in this podcast space now, I think it's really truly amazing that people like you and I can get together, just meeting on Instagram and form this bond where we talk on the phone during the week. We give each other pointers and we try to do this thing once a month. I mean, I think it's pretty amazing being sober with all the stress, uh, but I wouldn't want it any other way right now.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, you said that so well. I think about the hard work and I think about the time that I put in and posting the videos. I was the same way. I had no social media. I didn't for years. I'd meet people when we would go out and they'd say, "Man, what's your Instagram? What's your Facebook?" What? I don't use that shit. And as time went on, I made the podcast. I realized, oh, I have to do this. I am
Yeah.
not famous. I am not a celebrity. I do not have a shit ton of money. I do not have all these connections with people. There's nothing that I am starting out with from ground one that is going to make my podcast blow up. Just nothing. So it comes into hard work. But you said it, it's amazing. I would say the biggest gift that I get out of all of this is the relationships, the people that I've met. I talked to you in Pennsylvania. I talked to a bunch of people up north, all over the US that I've met doing podcast stuff. And it's amazing, man. And it extends so much further than podcasts. It's having these friends, these solid bonds, these people that are going through a lot as well that you can call and talk to. And it makes all the difference in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the next step is to go to a conference, is to take me and my dumb ass and my girlfriend down to some podcasting conference for like 3 days and just sit on the social media marketing aspect of it. Because listen, man, podcasts are podcasts. As Scotty G from Just Be With Scotty G, who I had on last week, said, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just doing it the Seal City Roundtable way. And you're just doing it the Sober Fix podcast way. Nothing we're doing is wrong. And that's what's great about podcasting is like we can do it whichever way we want because guess what? It's mine. It's my name on it. It's your name on it. Like if we screw it up, nobody cares. It's we're the ones that are critical. We're the ones that sit there and go, oh, I should be getting more views or oh, I wish I got more comments. But at the end of the day, the fact that we're able to do this and work full-time jobs and have families and, make this work, I just think, there's a shirt I have that I got from a lady who has a website called Inspiring Sobriety. And it says sober, SOBER, son of a bitch, everything's real. And I think that is the most plain and simple way to explain what it's like to be sober. You
Yeah.
know, all the shit that we ignored. If I would have put the work into this that I put into getting my drinks every night, I'd be Joe Rogan. Like
Yeah.
that's how good I was at, focusing on that one task in front of me. Now I've got 7 tasks that I got to pay attention to because I'm doing all the stuff that I'm supposed to be doing. Like I got a bird in my attic. Like, fuck that guy. I got a bird in my attic right now. I moved in 2 weeks ago. I got a bird flopping around above my bathroom. It's driving me freaking insane. But you know what? Rent free. He can stay.
Right. Yeah. And it's a great point though. I always put so much energy into getting high. Everything I had in me had to go to it. Now, it didn't start off that way. First, it was minimal effort, go out with friends on a Friday night, whatever. But as time went on, it started to take more and more of me. It started to have more of a control over me. I started to obsess over it. My body just craved it all the time. All of a sudden, man, I can't focus on anything else. And I think that if we could take some of the drive, I think every person who suffers from alcoholism, addiction, mental health stuff, I think there is a drive in them. It's that survivor's drive. And a lot of times we we tuned into that in order to get by and get enough drinks in us, get enough drugs in us, survive, get through jail, get through prison, get through divorces, whatever it is. I think if we could find a way to tap into that same drive when we are sober, which I think me and you are talking about right now, finding a way to just change the input instead of this energy that's going into to getting loaded and trying to escape and trying to not deal with stuff. Now we're putting it into productive things, and I think that's what's making all the difference. Suddenly we're getting a different result out of life. Doesn't make it any easier sometimes, but
No, it's harder. It's much harder. It's much harder being sober and being present for everything. Like I said, Scotty G last week. I mean, we were talking about some of the same stuff. It's like, you put a challenge in front of me. You sit there and go, "I bet you can't stay sober for 30 days." I'll be like, "Fuck you, let's go." Like I'll beat you. Because I'm competitive. But as soon as that 30 days is over, I'm back on the bottle because, living healthy and living free and living a good life doesn't factor into my programming. What factors into my programming is, oh, you challenge me, I'm going to take that challenge. Now, if we could translate that as addicts and alcoholics into a motivation to do things on a daily, I don't think there'd be any alcoholics or addicts left in the world. But we don't. Like you said, we do everything for that substance. So I think you bring up a good talking point. How did your addiction start and how did it escalate? Like, what did you see? What did you go through?
I was a freeze dried alcoholic is the way that I put that. And I heard this from a friend. This is not something I made up, but he heard my story and he said, "Yeah, man, you're a freeze dried alcoholic." Basically what he means by that is I started drinking later on. Well, compared to most people, I was 17 years old. I blacked out that first night from just, I had good friends around me that took care of me that night, but I blacked out. I had a strange relationship with alcohol from the very beginning. I had addiction basically just under my skin waiting for me. I just needed to wake it up. Now I had no idea at the time, but it quickly escalated for me. My story was I discovered alcohol. I quickly went from alcohol to drugs and I switched between the two. When I stopped doing drugs or I didn't have as much money, I could still get a hold of alcohol and that would go up. So basically, to answer your question overall, I was a freeze dried alcoholic. It hit me. And from the second that I tried the stuff, I went downhill right away. Everything that I was into or that I enjoyed out of life previous to drinking was immediately cast out. I kind of joke around, but I say the second I took a drink, everything lost its value in my life by 50%, like that night. But it's different for everyone. I know some people that were able to, they had that slow progression. They had years of doing really well. And essentially, and then you have the people that the whole way through, they had good families, they held good jobs, they had houses, they had cars. I didn't have any of that. I just couldn't acquire any of it because it had such a control on me from the beginning. But what was it like for you? Were you someone that was a freeze dried alcoholic? Was it a little bit slower paced?
I'm kind of a hybrid drinker, is what I would say. Like you, I had my first drink when I was 17. And I was really shy. I was really like introverted, and I was an athlete, but I wasn't like outgoing. I kept to myself, and I started dating this girl. I switched schools. I got kicked out of public school for punching a teacher in the face. Long story. We'll talk about it later. Um,
Sounds like a good
and
one.
I ended up in a Catholic school with like my graduating class was 41. I went from a school where it was like 1,500 to 41. And I met this girl. She was my first serious girlfriend, and she drank and smoked weed. So I would drink and smoke weed with her. I remember, the first time I had a drink, it's a stereotypical story of an alcoholic. Like all my worries went away, all my pain went away. I just felt like I felt free of the burden that I felt I had. Nobody put it on me. It was all self-imposed. But I've had mental health issues my whole life, if you ask me. But I drank the first time and I realized that I feel good when I drink. So then it was like drinking every weekend. Then it was drinking, going out to the car during lunch and killing a 40 of Old English 800 or Crazy Horse or some nonsense malt liquor that tastes like turpentine, you know. And then I went to college and I drank in college. I joined a fraternity. I started drinking every day. Um, and that just became my lifestyle. That became my norm, was to drink every day. Now there were times where I drank less. When I got out of college, I didn't drink as much, but I still drank every day. and then fast forward to, my divorce in 2020, like that, the 3 years before that, I was hitting it hard. And then the divorce happened and I hit it even harder. And then the breakup of the girl I dated after my divorce hit. And then I was just done. I was just, you couldn't keep me sober. I would fight you tooth and nail if you told me not to drink to do something, because I went out everywhere drinking. So, I had good job, city of Pittsburgh police officer for 12 years, making six figures a year. I always had a new car. I had a nice house. I had two Great Danes. Like, I had everything except for my mental health and my stability.
Yeah.
So over time, the alcohol just eroded me from the inside out so much that when I was done, I was like you, like nothing mattered anymore. It was just all about me getting to a drink right after work so I could make it home, and then drinking my face off because I had to shut the noise off in my head. All the negative feelings and all the things I hated about myself. I needed to find a place to get rid of them. And alcohol was the only thing that ever did that for me.
Yeah. And do you think, I ponder this sometimes, do you think I'll kind of tell you my view. So someone like you, for example, that was able to hold good jobs and was able to have the relationships, have the cars and everything. I think sometimes I've seen people that had the stuff and that were managing it a little bit better, besides the mental health stuff, but just managing stuff on the outside better. I've seen them have a harder time getting sober because they had areas of their life that were going well. It's like, hey man, I hold a job. I can't be an alcoholic, man. I hold a job. I have these relationships. I do well. See, for me at the end, when I just everywhere I looked to try and justify why I wasn't an alcoholic, every place I looked in my life that I pointed to was just burnt to the ground. Do you think it was harder to accept that you could have a problem because you were somewhat functional?
I think that's a huge crutch that we fall back on. Like, I don't think I ever said I wasn't an alcoholic. I think I always knew I was. I think I always was like, in my mind, I was like, when it gets bad, I'll just sober up. You know what I mean? When it gets bad. But then that line, that threshold kept getting pushed further and further and further to what was not acceptable anymore. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
and I think when you have, like, for example, someone who has a family and, has a good job and has cars and has a big house, I think it's very hard for them because of stature, what people think of them. For me, the law enforcement thing made it hard because, nobody wants to know that the cop that's coming to their house to deal with their problems is a flaming alcoholic, and was drinking till 2 o'clock in the morning the night before, got up at, 9 o'clock to go to court and has been running all day and he's totally burnt out. Nobody wants to see that. So it was more for me. I don't think the cars and all that shit mattered. It was my reputation as a police officer. I did not want to lose what I had built over the 12 years, um, of being decent at my job and being a good person while the rest of my life was a fucking dumpster fire, you know?
Yeah.
But I do think for a lot of people that are successful, and, success in this country is a black and white thing. There's no in between for successful. It's either you make money or you don't. You have a big house or you don't. You have a Mercedes Benz or you don't. You know, uh, and I started to realize that I wasn't successful at anything because I was failing at everything because nothing was getting my full attention. But I really do think that people that have good lives outside of their addiction, um, it comes down to status and it comes down to, what other people think, like you were like you were a double whammy, you were drugs and alcohol. So, I think a lot more often than not, that is a recipe for just straight fucking your life falling apart. Because
Oh
if you
yeah.
got both those things in front of you, you always have an option. I just stuck to booze. So it's like, oh, it's legal. It's not a big fucking deal. I just drink too much. I'll be fine. How is it like for you? Because I went to a lot of guys in rehab. A lot of people I met were similar. They had an addiction to alcohol and to drugs. How hard is it to make that decision when you can get anything you want whenever you want and you could just keep on going? How did you get to the point where you said, enough is enough. I can't keep living like this?
I got to the point. See, I think what fed my years of addiction and the reason why I wasn't able to stop and the reason why I didn't get help for a while, I had this idea in my head that one day I would be able to control it. One day And I had a few false beliefs going on. I had
Yeah,
another one.
that's the purple elephant that never doesn't exist. You know,
Yeah,
I'll just be okay.
I will be okay. I will figure this out. It's kind of like you talked about. If it gets bad enough, I will figure this out. And as time went on, what started to happen, I also fell for this too. I would say heroin's bad, pills are bad, Xanax is bad,
But booze is
morphine
okay.
bad. But maybe I can put that stuff down and I could be like my normal friends that go out as adults and have a beverage on a Friday night and get to have a couple drinks. See, that was my fantasy that I chased. Every single time that I went out, let's say I had some time off of the drugs. Maybe I had a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Didn't happen often, but it happened here and there when I was forced to get sober at some point or things got really rough. And I always started on drugs again by the same thing pretty much. I would go out to have a couple drinks and play pool. And I've talked about this before, but that was this thing in my head. Now, I had never gone out and had a couple drinks ever in my entire life. Yet every single time I go out to drink, I feed myself that, you know? So I think a lot of it was I had to be beaten down. I had to realize that it was never going to change. I was never going to drink successfully ever. I was never going to do drugs successfully ever. It was almost harder for me to give up the alcohol because the drugs, it was very apparent. It was, man, I got to do some shady shit, call some shady people and be doing shady things in order to get this stuff. But the alcohol, man, I just got to go to CVS.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty personal to me right now because I have a good friend that I was in treatment with, and he like me is coming up on 2 years, and I got a text message from the other day saying, "Hey man, I'm really glad you've been there for me. I'll really mean this when I detox." And I'm like, "What?" So I
Oh,
texted him
you
right away. I'm
know.
like, "Bro, are you okay?" He's like, "No, I fucking relapsed bad," and
Oh,
his substance was cocaine.
uh,
So he relaxed, but he was similar to you. You know, he would go out and have a couple drinks, and he fell a couple times in the last 2 years, but he got back on track. He'd go out, he'd drink, and the drink. Listen, marijuana is not a gateway drug. Alcohol is a gateway drug. You want something that's going to lead you to make bad decisions, do bad things, and put things in wrong holes. That's what you're going to use. Alcohol is going to make you do all the dumb shit.
you just don't give
Because
a fuck.
it's completely legal. It's everywhere. The government's never going to stop it because they get paid for you to get drunk and kill yourself. So, the government being so concerned about its citizens will let you kill yourself with alcohol. And as soon as they legalize these drugs that they want to legalize, they'll let you kill yourselves with them too, as long as they get their money. But side note, yeah, so my buddy's struggling right now and he's going to go back into rehab. And I'm like, fuck, man, he's out in like fucking Indiana or Wisconsin or some fucking middle Western stupid state. And I can't do anything for him except be like, listen, man, call me. Let's talk. Let's work it out. But it's the same thing you're talking about. He would go out and have a couple drinks, and over time, you may make it 6 months, a year and a half, 10 years doing that. But one, you're going to be always thinking about that substance because you know that the options are there when you drink. And sooner or later, you're going to give in. It's just a matter of time. You cannot fight the disease and win if you're allowing some substance to corrupt your programming.
Absolutely. And you just said it perfectly because what I didn't realize is by trying to put the drugs down and drink a couple beers, I did not realize that I was still feeding the disease. See, there was a big disconnect for me. I don't know if it's because I just am hard-headed or prideful or don't listen to shit in rehab. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's the source of that thinking, but I know that I thought I was doing something better by drinking, and I didn't realize that I was feeding the same beast. I had no idea that, and I love that you mentioned it can work for a little bit. I always tell people, for me, it didn't last long for me. If I'm drinking, I've got maybe a month, but the day is going to come, the night is going to come where there's just the right amount of stress. I'm just pissed off enough, just hungry enough, lonely enough, tired enough. The world is treating me just not right, just enough. The stars align, and suddenly the alcohol is it's just not cutting it for one night. And I'm not sober anyway. I'm already drinking. So
Yeah.
and then I make the justification that okay, I can pick up the drugs. Now once I pick up the drugs, it's over. I didn't realize it was over when I started the drinking. But once I pick up that stuff, it's really over. And I find myself in that same cycle, and I will repeat that over and over and over again until I start to change a lot of things in my life and start to have different reactions to life, start to have support around me, start to have some type of a spiritual life, start getting new friends, hanging out in new places. I need to do a lot because I was sick out there, man. And I had to get realistic about how much treatment I needed, what I needed to do to get somewhat comfortable sober.
See, I got sober in 2017, and I made it about a month before I had a drink, and there was no qualms about it. I knew I was going to drink again. Like I wasn't getting clean to stay sober. I was getting clean because my life was completely unmanageable, and I needed to fucking take a break. You know, and the first time I went to the bar and had a drink, I came home that night and I was so fucking angry. I just wanted to punch a wall, and I was like, "Why am I angry?" And then I sat with myself, and I'm like, "I'm angry because I didn't drink more." Like, what reasonable person thinks that way? This disease is not selective. It doesn't care what you're addicted to. As long as you're addicted to something, it's going to feed off of it. So I know people that have had coke habits for 20 years and cut that cold turkey, but can't quit drinking.
Oh, drinking's hard, man. It is
It's just
hard.
everywhere. It's everywhere. And nobody really takes it seriously until you're sitting on your couch with a Glock 43 in your hand, ready to put a bullet in your head. And you're like, shit's not working. I got to figure something out here. You
Yeah,
know,
and only the people that have been through it understand that. And I think that's kind of the problem. So many people drink normally that to them they just don't understand how deep it takes some people.
Well, so let's since we're talking about this, let's go back. Let's go back even further. A lot of these people, the normies, and I don't mean that as an insult. I just mean that you aren't fucked up. Um, don't understand that this isn't a choice. Like for me, addiction is not a choice. What was a choice for me was to take that first drink. That was my choice. You know, and after that, like I personally think every human being is predisposed with a gene for addiction. It's in there somewhere. But the difference is they don't have a set of triggering events that occur that weaken us to the point where it blossoms and it shows its ugly head and says, "Hey, guess what? I can solve all your fucking problems." And then you're stuck. And then, once you get so far into the addiction, your mind's just taking a ride. Like your body's running the show. Like you said that you would go back, you'd make it like a month and then you go back and drink again or you go back and use again. It's because your body needs it. Like your body was programmed that anything that happens that doesn't fit what you want or makes you feel bleh, your body says, I need this, I need this, I need this. And your brain goes, well, I mean, you've been running the show for the last 20 fucking years. You've been doing okay. I'll listen to you today. And then you end up in detox or in jail or, wanting to kill yourself. It's just, do you think for you that it was a choice to be an addict, like a conscious choice? And I'm not just saying like a subconscious choice, like, oh, I'm drinking, I'm drinking, I'm drinking. Oh, now I'm an alcoholic. I'm talking like, did you sit down one day and go, you know what? I want to go in and out of jail. I want to lose all my fucking shit. I want to give the government money every time I go to court, because this is fun. I really enjoy being this way. I really enjoy not being able to survive without this drug. Or was it, like me, you tried it, you liked it. And next thing you know, it becomes a habit and then it becomes ingrained in your personality and in your body and then you're stuck.
Yeah, for me it was a little bit of both. It started off I just wanted to be normal, fit in with the friends that were, I was 17 and everyone's cracking open a couple beers and I had already turned beers down a bunch of time previous. I just wasn't into it at the time. I was younger. I just didn't really care. And man, I found it to be so much fun. I enjoyed every second of it, even that first night that I told you about where I blacked out. For whatever reason, I didn't know what it was doing at the time, but it was doing something magical, man. I couldn't describe it to anyone. But I think that for me, it started off as a choice. It was something that I chose to do to fit in, have a good time, relax. I don't feel like I was trying to escape anything in the very beginning. But as time went on, man, I lost all choice. I couldn't get off the stuff. And I'll kind of give you an idea of what happened. When I was 17 years old, I had never been in trouble. I had kind of this stereotypical normal family that no one drank or used. I was quite lucky in that aspect. I've talked to a lot of friends and other co-alcoholics that had some really rough beginnings. I didn't have that. And I had a hard time with that in the beginning because I had no excuse for being sober. Or for being loaded. I had no excuse. Everything seemed to be going fine from early on in life. But the second that I got high, man, everything went to shit. I had never been in trouble before. Within a year, I had a felony sales case and a DUI within the first year of starting to drink. And this was someone that never really got in trouble at school, never had been in trouble before. All of a sudden, I have this case and I have felonies and I'm going to court and my life. And instead of going to college, I'm now looking at going into jail. And man, it hit me so quick, so quick. I didn't know what to do. And as time went on, I felt like I had control, but I didn't, man. It's like it started off as something that was a choice that I really enjoyed, that I like to have I had a good time doing. But as time went on, I just couldn't get off the shit. I could not get off the shit. No matter how many treatment centers or detoxes I went to, I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, see, I have a lot of friends that still drink and drink heavily. They go out and party, they have fun day Sundays and all that good shit. And it's funny because I don't really, and I'm not recovered by any means. I'm going to be in recovery my entire life because I'm the type of personality it takes boom, 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 and I'm drinking again. Like it doesn't take much. I got to be on point all the time. And I remember I was maybe like 4 or 5 months sober, and my buddy's wife is like, "You think you'll ever be able to have a drink with us again? We really miss our Sundays and all the fun we had." And I'm like, I wish I could tell you yes. I really do. Um, because I miss all the fun times. I miss all the good times because it wasn't all bad. I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of it was good. Like a lot of fun was had drinking. What normal person jumps through a 12-foot bonfire sober? Nobody. I mean, I did a lot of fun things growing up and I had a lot of good experiences while drinking. I met a lot of my good friends and the people that I'm still in touch with. A lot of them I met when I was drinking. My closest friends, some of them from college. But I think when it's all said and done, we get lost in being uncomfortable. Like that just becomes the norm. Like we're okay giving the reins up. We don't want to give up control, but we're okay giving the reins up to the substance that makes us feel good. And one of the biggest things to talk about in AA, one of the first things you have to do is give up control. You have to just say, I can't control this. I can't do this by myself. And I think, going back to the point about people that have successful lives and shit, that's where the breakdown is. I think people are afraid to ask for help because they're afraid to feel like they failed and they're afraid to feel weak when, admitting you have a problem and asking for help is probably the toughest thing anybody can do. And it takes the most amount of strength, at least for me, to get up off the floor and say, you know what, I'm going to do something about this because I just can't go on. Um,
Oh, it was
what
so
was,
hard. So
yeah,
hard.
I mean, it's looking back on it, I mean, I got 2 years in May, and time is going by it goes by so quick, and I, it's almost like I forget what I went through sometimes. Like life is so good. Like I just bought a house, and I'm in a great relationship. I got two beautiful dogs. I love where I live. I love my job. Like everything is going so good, and this is when things usually go down the drain. So I'm always waiting for that other foot to drop where something bad happens. And, my dad just died like 3.5 weeks ago, but I still didn't drink. But I'm always worried. I'm always concerned, I guess aware that something could happen that throws me over the edge. How do you deal with that? Like, if you have that same thought process, you may not. But if you have the same thing where you think, someday, what's going to cause me to drink or what's going to cause me to use? I mean, how do you deal with those thoughts?
I mean, I think all of us deal with that in some way. And I think it's because for so many years, life would get good and things would change and I'd rebuild my life and I'd start getting hope again. And then that awful time would come, like you talked about with your friend who's sitting in detox again. And I just could not believe how I got there again. I remember sitting in detox over and over and over again, man. It's like, what the fuck just happened? I just had 10 months sober. Like what just transpired over the last week that I'm sitting in detox again? I remember I was in drug court. I was in jail for 6 months. I went to my third program while in drug court, which was another 90 days. So by that point, I had around the 9 months. I got out. I'm talking about this 10 months relapse. I got out, man, and I just could not believe how I ended up back at square one so quickly and what felt like no input on my end. It just happened. So to answer your question, I was always waiting for that to happen again. I was always waiting for something to fall off. When is the stressful day that is going to take me out? Like everything has always taken me out over the last 14 years. When is it coming? It's coming, just when. And so I think we all battle that. And I think what happens over time is I just started to realize Look, there's always going to be a little bit of anxiety. I think sometimes that's good. There's always going to be a little bit of fear of, I don't want to go back. I think some of that is definitely healthy. I think what I do now to kind of combat that, of just that constant underlying anxiety of, when is the shoe falling off? When am I going to go back to that stuff, is just focusing on like what's going on today. I look at all the stuff that's helped me get to this point, coming up on 5 years, and I just do the same stuff. I haven't really tweaked the recipe too much. I just continue to do what works. I try and make sure that I contact other friends and people that are recovered or in recovery. I try and make sure that I have that. And I think what that does is it helps me stay accountable, and it helps me not forget, like you talked about, where we can easily forget, you know. I try and reach out to others. And that's the biggest thing about this podcast stuff, is meeting people like you, meeting guests that come on, and talking to them. It's really a big part of my service. Like, I don't make money from this in any way. And I put a lot of time and money into it. So I think, to answer your question overall, man, is I think I'm always going to have that fear. I think what I do today is I just do the actions that have been working. I don't change the things that are working when things are going good, and I don't change them when things are going bad. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think that's a big reason why the people we know relapse. You know, I think it's a couple things. I think a lot of times people want their old life back. Um, no, that life was no good, you know, and then they try to take on too much too early, you know, because when we get out of rehab, we're like infants, you know, we've just been reprogrammed, you know, we've been taught a better way to live. And then we come out and we just want to pick up where we left off with like work and this and that. And it doesn't work like that. You know, we have to take our time. We have to give ourselves time to heal in order to get to some type of normalcy, you know. And I think that's what happens to a lot of my friends that have gone back in, is like, you know, they got jobs right away and they worked in fucking recovery and they worked as like counselors, and like all they saw was addiction and all this shit all day long. And I just, I mean, I think it's a good thing to give back to the community, our community. But I think we also have to take our time when we get out of treatment or once we get sober, because literally we're training ourselves how to live again. And the more stress you add, the more stress you have to deal with. And like I said before, son of a bitch, everything's real. Like, you feel everything. So when it gets hard, it's so much harder because you're not drowning it out with something. You know, you have to fight through that moment. You have to fight through whatever's going on in your life to get to the other side. And in our past, we were okay giving up. But now, as being sober, you know, we don't want to lose. We don't want to fail at this, because if we fail at this, we're probably going to die.
Yeah, we don't have the escape button anymore. As shitty as addiction was, I always knew that no matter what I was going through, no matter how pissed off I was, no matter how much pain or hurt I was in, I had an escape button. And that was picking up those drugs or picking up that bottle. And that, at least temporarily, would help me cope and make me feel better. And I remember, and to your point, I remember being at about 6 months sober, the shininess of turning my life around, going to treatment, and getting sober had kind of started to wear off a little bit. Because at first it was like, fuck yeah, I'm sober, man. This is amazing. I can't believe I've done this. Everything's changing in my life. I feel God in my life. This is amazing. And at 6 months, I realized, oh shit, like you were talking about, those feelings started to flood in. And I was having a hard time getting a job, and people would interview me and they'd give me a name tag and take the picture and tell me when I was starting, and then they'd run the background check and they'd say fuck you, and they wouldn't call me back. And I had very little money, and I'm trying to work, and I'm in drug court, and I'm having to go to all these classes, and man, it just, the wreckage of my past was hitting me head on like a train. And I started to realize, I don't have that emergency button anymore. I don't have it. Like, this is like sobriety for real. This isn't some temporary sobriety. This is, I can't run anymore. That was a scary feeling at first.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I agree with you 100%. Like, if the recipe works and you're doing things that are keeping you sober and keeping you happy, there's no point changing that recipe. You know, the things work for a reason. It's because your body is responding to whatever you're doing, and your mind is responding to whatever you're doing in a good way. I think when people start thinking like, "Oh, I'm okay," like maybe I'll do this and maybe I'll do that, and they stop going to AA, and they stop, you know, doing this, they stop doing that, they stop talking to friends, they stop sharing their feelings. Like, that's just opening. That's like setting the breadcrumbs out, and you just follow that and you keep on going, and you're going to end up hitting that wall again. You know, for me, I was just over a year sober, and one of my best friends got killed on his motorcycle. Kenny Finnegan. He was one of the guys who helped me create the podcast. Um, so like I had to deal with that fairly early in sobriety. And then fast forward, my dad dies just recently, so like I've had two major losses in the last 2 years, and I didn't drink over either one of them. And, you know, you said you've been to multiple rehabs, you've been to multiple detoxes, like I found a rehab that it worked for me. You know what I mean? Like there's so many out there. You can go to the stereotypical one that's like, white walls, like an 8 by 8 room. You got three roommates and you follow this 17-hour schedule. Or you can go to a rehab where they're laid back and they focus more on like your mental health and things like that. Like, how do you, being the experienced rehab specialist that you are, uh, like this last one, what was different the last time you went into treatment that you're coming up on 5 years?
I think what was different the last time is I showed up there after an overdose, which I've talked to you about before, and I could feel it. My body, my sternum was cracked from the CPR. My dad kept me alive. I literally felt like I had died. It was hard to explain, but my body felt like that. Like I did not feel right. And what that did is it cracked through this armor that I had that we kind of touched on earlier, where I told myself I would one day be able to control this, or I was somewhat in control. I knew at that moment I will die from it. I couldn't deny it anymore because for so long, whenever I went out to drink, I always thought I'd make it back and stuff. And so when I went to this rehab the last time, man, I was broken, and mainly my pride. I had no more answers. I couldn't justify getting high anymore or drinking. It had literally just killed me. I was out of answers. That I had been running my life the way I wanted to do it. I picked and choose certain things from recovery programs that I was willing to do and just discarded the rest as if I knew what I was doing. And I went to this rehab, and I kind of knew I was done because I was so tired of being there. Normally, when I'd go to rehab, it was kind of exciting and I'd be shooting the shit with the friends and smoking cigarettes all day long. And it was like, oh, this is cool. I'm going to change my life. And I would barely do any work there and I didn't take it serious. And I'd be drinking within a day almost every time. This time I was tired, man. I was so pissed off at being there again. I was so tired of starting my life over again. And I kind of had this knowledge of this will never change. Like for real, it's never going to change. I know that I tell my friends that one day this will be okay and I'll be able to drink like a normal person, and drinking's fun and it's only affects me and all this bullshit. By the time I went to that rehab, man, I'd say it was the one thing that was different. It wasn't really the program. It was just something had changed in me where I realized that if I ever wanted to live somewhat of a decent life, ever, I had to finally dig in and get sober.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times, there's such a high uh, relapse rate for alcoholics and addicts. And I think a large part of that is the fact that a lot of times people, like you said, I was the same when I got sober the first time. I didn't take anything seriously. Like I took what I thought I could use and bagged the rest. And then the last rehab I went to, the one where transformations, which recently closed, unfortunately, um, you know, one, the environment was good for me because it allowed me to maintain my connection with society. Um, because we would go shopping on Sundays as a group or Saturdays as a group, get all our food, and we had a lot of time to spend together at night. Like they didn't lock us down every night. It was just a better environment where I didn't feel like I was, outside of society. So I still was able to build relationships and, have time for me, to be an adult. The other thing is once I was diagnosed with PTSD and severe depression, a light switch went off in my head saying, hey, maybe there's something to this. Maybe there's something more than you just being an alcoholic. And as I went through the program and as I got towards the end, I stayed an extra 2 weeks. That's when I knew I had a chance of staying sober. I mean, I was
Wow.
turning down field trips. I wasn't going out to do stuff with other people. I was staying and going to the clinical building and doing my clinical stuff because I was like, I need this more than I need to go fucking rock climbing. You know what I mean? Like, I need this more than I need to go out to dinner. Like, I need to focus on what I'm going to do when I get out of here. So I stayed an extra 2 weeks. And that's when I knew that I had a chance, And then when Kenny died and when my dad died, and my first thought wasn't drinking, it was kind of uh, verification that, this is realistically possible for me to stay sober.
Yeah, and when did you know that? When
Like
was
that I
the
was going to stay
point?
sober.
Yeah, where you
Um,
realize I can actually do this. This is actually possible.
when I was leaving rehab, everybody goes, "Oh man, you're going to be good. You're going to be good." It's like that's like the kiss of death. Don't say you're going to be good to anybody getting out of rehab because we don't even know if we're going to be good.
No.
But I think, the first few months home, I was still on the fence on whether I could do this because I wasn't working for like a month and a half. I was out of a relationship and lonely. You know, a lot of things went not the way I had planned when I got home. Um, and I was going to therapy, and I went to my therapist, and he's like, "Dude, have you thought about drinking when all this shit was going on?" No, I mean, I thought about killing myself, but I didn't think about drinking. He's like, "Well, that's not good, but that's better. At least you're not drinking." I'm like, "Yeah, but I got to figure something out." And then it was when Kenny died in June of last year. I was in Rochester, which is about, I don't know, 400 miles from Pittsburgh ish. And I was driving back from doing a layover run out there. And his daughter texted me, "Have you seen Kenny? We can't get a hold of him." And I knew that he went riding in the morning. And I'm like, I start hearing these rumors from other people that there was a huge accident, a huge motorcycle accident. I'm like,
Oh,
that's
geez.
Kenny. Like I'm saying to myself, that's Kenny. It's got to be. And then I get a text message like a half hour later and say, yeah, Kenny's dead. And I pulled over on the side of the road and I, didn't cry. I didn't, I just sat there staring for like a half hour. And I got back in the truck. I drove back to Erie. I got off at a Giant Eagle exit, went into the Get Go, and I stood in front of the liquor cabinet for like Get Go's like a gas station, serves alcohol and all that shit, like a
Yeah.
Wawa or Sheets or whatever. And I stood in front of the liquor cabinet for like 10 minutes, just staring at it. Like just I really don't remember much. I just kind of phased out. And then I had this thought. I was like, if you drink, that's the biggest insult you could ever throw at Kenny because he was there for me the whole time. And at that point, I had started the podcast. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I have purpose. My purpose is to do this podcast and to always think about Kenny and always think about, our friendship and the good things that he brought to my life. So now, literally, whenever I think I'm going to drink, I think of him. And I know he's up there. I know he's fucking making fun of me for doing his podcast because he thinks I'm a big sissy. But, the fact is, I know that if I ever drink, I let him down. So, I mean, really, that's my guiding force is the podcast and always having Kenny proud of me. And it sounds kind of weird and corny, but, every time I think about him, I know I'm not going to drink.
Yeah, man, and you're essentially you're talking about your reason,
Mhm.
your real, truthful, no bullshit reason for continuing on this life sober and for turning your life around. Thank you for sharing that. That's powerful stuff, dude. And I
Yeah.
think it's all about figuring out your reason, and it may be different for everyone, but at least you know yours.
Yeah. It was crazy. I was driving up in, like Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania. And you got to take this Route 99, which is hilly, goes all over the place. It's super dark. And I got out to take a picture of the sky because it was beautiful. And it was like 2 or 3 days after Kenny died. And I took this picture. And believe it or not, in the image, I still have it saved. I'll show it to you sometime. Um, the way the camera was set and the way the sky was set, in the corner, there was a faint light that looked like a cross. Like,
No
no
shit.
bullshit. I'll send it to you. Um, and I was like, holy fuck, he's with me in the truck right now. Like he's saying he's okay. And I'm not a religious person. Like, I believe in God, but I don't go to church all the time. Like I'm just not. And for me to like see that, that just told me a lot of things about myself, that I'm on the right path and that if he's up there looking down on me and he's happy and he's proud of me, that's worth enough for me to stay sober.
Yeah, man, and that's powerful stuff, and that's one of those things that you can't always explain, but I'm sure in that moment you could feel it. I'm
I
on.
broke down right there. I broke down
Yeah,
right there on the side of the road. I was like, holy fuck, like this is crazy. And I think like you said, my reason, everybody's got to have a purpose to stay sober and stay clean. Some people's purpose is their family. Some people's purpose is work. Some people's purpose is, AA, whatever your higher power, your purpose, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is, you know, and I think that's a hard thing for people to figure out, because I think initially it's a superficial, higher power purpose. It's just enough to get you by. So like when I got out of rehab, it was like I'm going to do this because I want to go to AA and I want to be sober and I want to, I want to pay attention. So I'm going to stay sober to go to AA. And as time moved on, the podcast and my relationship became my purpose. And then finally, I've transitioned to a point where I finally want to stay sober for me because I don't want to give up anything that I have, anything that I've worked on to build over the last 2 years. I'm not giving that up for any reason. So yeah, I'm not going to drink again. And if I do, hopefully you come here and kick me in the head.
Well, it's like you've built that, and I hear people talking about this a lot, but you built that life that's just no longer worth giving up anymore for
No, I
any,
mean, it's just,
you know.
I mean, I never could have bought this house. I never could have been doing this podcast. Because, I mean, there's one thing I'm not, and that's a hypocrite. I'm not going to sit here talk about being sober and you get off camera and start drinking. It's something I won't do. Um, so what's your, I mean, this is real personal, but what's your purpose or what keeps you going knowing that you can get through anything?
I think for me, it's similar to yours, especially in the aspect that it started to evolve. I talked about when I ended up after that, the day after the overdose, and next thing you know, I'm in treatment again for the seventh time, whatever. Man, at first it was, I just don't want to die. It was like extreme fear, and it just started to evolve. All of a sudden, things started to change. My attitude towards life started to change. I started to feel more centered. For the first time in my life, I started to wake up and be somewhat okay with who I was, where I was, doing what I was doing. And as time went on and I started doing the, like you talked about, the podcast stuff, man, I started meeting new people and I finally had support around me, like real friends, real people that care about your well-being and want to see you do well and are super supportive for the first time ever. I mean, I had a lot of drug associates, friends. We had the same common goal of getting high or going out and getting wasted all the time. I did have some really good friends that I used with that were kind of a hybrid of that, but for the most part, towards the end, man, I was lonely. I had no one to call, no one to turn to. I hadn't seen family in years. And I think now my purpose now is, and it's kind of on the similar street as yours, is I'm living a better life than I ever have before, ever. Like sobriety has given me a new existence that I never thought possible. And for me, a lot of times it has to do with being financially secure, but mainly it's the way I feel in the morning, dude. And you touched on it, not waking, not wanting to just die, not being so depressed that you just don't even want to get out of bed, not feeling like a complete failure anywhere you look in your life and just going, man, I just can't believe this. So it's like, I think the overall answer is I feel better today than I ever thought possible, ever. Like the things that I'm doing to stay sober on a daily basis are combining and making me feel better than drugs ever made me feel, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And I think that's a big problem for a lot of us is that we can't get past that rough part. Like a lot of the people that we know that have relapsed, their life starts to come around and we're impatient and we want things to develop quicker than they have to. Well, it took me 49 years to fuck my life up. It's not going to take me 3 days to fix it, you
and it's
know?
hard. You're going to have to go through some shit. You're going to go through some hard nights sober in the very beginning.
There's some nights where I didn't think I was going to make it through the night. Like I literally was like, I can't do this. Like I want to drink, in the early days, I'm like, I want to drink. I just want to, my brain is driving me nuts because it's not like your brain slows down, you know,
Yeah.
my brain was still always going because now it was, it had all this new information from treatment on things that I can do to stay sober. But then I had all the bad shit still in there trying to work its way in and confuse the new life.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think one of the most important things to remember getting sober is like it's going to get much harder before it gets better, but it does get better if you're willing to put the work in and you find the right recipe that keeps you sober. But at the end of the day, it's ultimately our responsibility to make that choice to stay sober, just like we made the choice to pick up the first drink.
Yeah. At some point, I mean, you can get sober for your kids. You can get sober because you've been broken. You want money. You can get sober because you had serious health issues. You can get sober because you had a lot of mental health stuff going on. I had some of that as well. But at some point, like at some point in the journey, it has to be for me. At some point, I have to accept responsibility of what I have going on, and just understand, and there's a lot of things that can get us sober. There's whatever brings you into recovery, whatever brings you into turning your life around, finally making that call to treatment or detox or whatever the case is, going to 12-step stuff, whatever brings you into recovery, that's amazing. I think the
Yeah.
goal eventually is somehow in your own way. You don't have to do anything that I did to get sober. You don't have to do exactly what Mark did to get sober, but in your own way, finding a way that you're doing it for yourself at some point. That's a goal. We got to get there somehow,
Yeah, that's a great point because anything material can go away. Relationships can go away. You still got to be able to stay sober through all that shit. So I think 100%, we have to be patient enough and, you know, ride it out and just know that we're doing the best we can. And that if we continue to do the best we can, and if we continue to make the next best decision and we continue to treat people with respect and be a good person and put our best foot forward, sooner or later, the addiction isn't going to have the hold it used to have because now we're strong enough to go, this is me now. This is what I want out of life. I don't want anything else. And a lot of it's settling. We have to settle for a lot of things. We have to settle that we can't go out and get drunk every night. We have to settle that we can't just get rid of our issues just by drinking a beer or doing a shot or doing a line of coke. Like now we just got to face everything head on and have the faith in ourselves, which I think is really hard to build, is that confidence in who we are as a person sober, being better than who we were as a person in addiction.
Oh, I totally agree. And I think for me, it took a lot of small wins, tiny wins, going into the grocery store and going past the beer aisle and not freaking the fuck out, or getting in an argument at work and not telling them fuck you and quitting, or having an argument in a relationship. Not all of it was related to alcohol, but just behaving right, and just getting navigating through these weird letdowns and situations in life to where I didn't take a drink, and I started to realize, I'm like, man, that's a win, dude. I went to the grocery store and was not standing in front of the alcohol, just salivating for an hour, pondering how I could find a way to drink again, and slowly but surely those tiny little wins just started to add up. And suddenly I realized, oh my God, dude, I have 30 days sober. This is a big friggin' deal. 30 days sober. And as time went on, so I think that's how things started to get better for me, as the small little wins started to add up, and all of a sudden I started to have just a little bit of hope, and just started to believe just a little bit. How
Yeah, I
did
mean, it's like, go ahead.
Go
Sorry.
ahead. Oh,
It's
okay.
like it's like building a house. It's like building
Yeah.
a house. You got to build the foundation first. All those small wins are the bricks in the foundation. And as long as you keep putting good quality bricks on top of good quality bricks, what can go wrong? You're doing the right things.
Yeah, and you're just putting it. I was going to ask you too, how was it in the very beginning when you got out of treatment? I know you said you stayed 2 weeks longer. How was it right when you got out?
I was shitting a brick all the way back to Pittsburgh. I was just anxious and worked up and in mania the whole way home. One of my best friends, Steve Duran, he was on my 1 year show. He picked me up at the airport, and the first thing we did is went up to my apartment. I said, "Go inside and clean that place out." And he went in and pulled everything out of there. Anything that could have been possible, fucking cough medicine, fucking mouthwash, like whatever it was, he pulled it out and threw it away. Big fucking bags of shit. And and then I called my work, once I got settled in, was like, "Hey, I'm ready to come back to work." They're like, no, you're not allowed to come back to work yet." I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Well, you got to see this third party person. Then they got to do an evaluation. Then they give you a treatment program. Then when you're done with that treatment program, you got to get another evaluation. And then when they're done with that evaluation, you could potentially come back to work."
Oh man.
So like a month and a half later, I went back to work, and all the things that I enjoyed to do, I couldn't do because they were triggers. Golfing was a trigger. Hitting golf balls was a trigger. Going out to eat was a trigger. Going to the gym was a trigger because I drank at the gym. Like I literally was like, I was in a cocoon for like the first week. I would just literally like, there was a basketball court close to me. I would go out by myself. I go play basketball. I go for walks. Try to be mindful of my mental health. But it was torture. It literally was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, was to come home and I say it over and over again, to retrain myself how to be sober, because I couldn't remember the last time I was sober. But I found that 2 to 3 AA meetings a day for the first month is what truly got me through, because I met great people in the program. I learned a lot about the program. I learned a lot about myself through listening to other people. And I think that for me was the foundation of my recovery, was not not the stuff that happened in treatment, right? Like a lot of it was good, but it was me having the desire and the determination to do something not to drink. And I think that's the most important thing when you come home is you don't have to do everything. There's no right way to do it, but you got to pick something. You got to do something healthy, whether it's go to the gym or go to therapy or, get a massage therapist, not Asian, not ha ha ha, not that, but, do something good for yourself. And for me, it was going to A meetings repeatedly. And, I think I went to over 100 in the first month. And then now I go when I need to now, but the relationships I built there are the ones that got me through the first 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, man, I was the same way. I had nowhere else to go. I didn't know where to go. And everyone from the rehabs to the courts to looking back on my past and trying to figure out where have I gone to try and get some help. It was the same thing for me, man. There was something about just having someplace to go where I was surrounded by people that finally kind of understood. And
It's
and,
our
and it,
tribe, man. That's our tribe.
yeah, that was it. I finally I started to listen to other people and I started to relate and I could openly talk about what was going on not only in my life but in my head. And people would be nodding and they'd say, "Man, I've been there," And for a long time, there was a lot of years where if I were to get honest about what was going on in my head and I would talk to people about that, I'd freak them the fuck out.
One of the biggest things I dealt with throughout my life was I never felt like I fit in anywhere, right? So when I was a cop, I didn't feel like I fit in there. I felt like I was an outsider there. I didn't fit in high school. I didn't think I fit in college. Like I never thought I fit in anywhere. And it was, the first AA meeting I went to was at this place called Doodle Church. It's up in Cranberry, Pennsylvania. Great little place, great little meeting. Um, and I went in there and I was shaking and I was red in the face and I was angry and I was just, ready to kill somebody. And I sat down and I immediately when I started listening to people, I'm like, I think I found where I fit in. Like, this is my people. This is my community. Like all these misfit toys, all these people fighting addiction and mental health are my people. And I think that's why this podcast continues. Granted, I kind of have a little bit of a hybrid, like I do other stuff other than addiction, but, addiction and mental health is always a driving force behind this because if I can put something out there, or if you can put something out there that can help one person for 5 minutes out of their day, I'm good. Like that's what I'm trying to do here. I think, you know, as the time goes on and we've built the good foundation, I think that our purposes evolve. Our reasons for doing things evolve. And when it's all said and done, I said this before, we got to put the work in the beginning. I mean, that's where it really counts. Granted, we have to maintain throughout life, but if you don't put the work in that first month or two, I mean, like hit the ground running as soon as you get home from rehab, you can't have any downtime. Like I literally got a calendar and like a planner, which I never used before. And I scheduled every one of my days out. Like I would schedule like, you know, AA meeting here at 8 a.m., go get lunch, go to the gym if I don't feel like I'm going to drink, then go to AA at noon and then go to AA at 6 p.m. And then like I'd put like eat here and like go for a walk. Like my days were full of filling all that free time that I spent drinking with constructive and positive activities. Some people think AA is a downer. No, AA is fucking awesome. It's a great place to go. You should go there even if you're not an alcoholic. Go to an open meeting and listen to the 12 steps. You'll learn something, you know? And I think that's what it came down to. It's like, you and I both put in a lot of work to get to where we are. And there's a lot more to be done. Coming up on 2 years, everybody's like, what are you going to do with 2 years? I start planning for year 3, brother. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to settle in. I'm going to get my coin for 2 years. I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to tell them how I did it. And then I'm going to get out of there and I'm going to go back and I'm going to go back right to what I've been doing for 2 years. Because if I come off of that plan, shit's going to go south.
Yeah, and it's like why mess with what is working?
Yeah. Why? Don't let anybody tell you what to do in your recovery. I mean, it's your recovery. We have to figure out what makes us tick and what things are going to, permeate into our fucking rock heads and stay there, and for me, it's meditation, breathing work, um, binaural beats, red light when I sleep, like all these things that I thought were for, hippies. And I do it all now because that's what helps me stay on path, and it's the little things. It's not the big, like, yeah, well, you said it, I think, when we talked about a month ago. You thought service work was like some big drastic thing that you had to do. Like, I got to go here and I got to, no, service work is opening the door for somebody. Service work is seeing a guy in a corner, knowing he's going to go take that money and go buy booze with it, but going, here, I'll give you some granola. Here's some nuts. Eat that. You know, it's the little things of just doing something outside of yourself that is the beauty about service work, is that there is no standard for service work. It's what you feel you need to do.
Yeah, and it's weird too because it's a weird concept to think my life gets better and I'm able to maintain sobriety when I start thinking about other people. It's against everything that this world is about today, it seems like, where it's get rich, get your money on, take, like get first in line, like educate yourself to where you're so competitive against other people that you're going to get the job. And, which is not all bad stuff. We live in a competitive society. I think there's some good things about that. But then all of a sudden you come into recovery and they're saying, man, you need to do something for someone else. And that was so foreign to me. Someone who dealt with just this terrible selfishness. I did not think highly about myself, but I was all I thought about. So I wasn't thinking too much good stuff about myself, but all I thought about was myself. And it was weird, man, when I walked into recovery and I used to complain about the way I was feeling and how I was down and this and that. And I'd have guys start questioning me, just these questions of, well, what are you doing? Have you talked to anyone that's new? What are you doing to try and help someone else out? What are you doing to get out of your own head? Because I can tell that you are stuck in your past right now. What are you doing to break that? And I had no answers, man. What do you mean, guys? Like, I'm trying to get a job and I'm trying to make some money and I'm trying to do this. And it's funny, man. It's a trippy concept. At least it was for me. Someone who always battled being so selfish and self-centered, to start getting out of myself and doing something for other people. But I think that it's so rewarding and at the same time, when you're talking to someone who's new in sobriety, recovery, whatever you want to call it, man, it's weird because you're almost looking at yourself and you're talking to them, and whatever they tell you is going on in their head or in their life or whatever they're thinking about doing next, or whatever they're going through, they're having a tough time, man. Odds are you've been in that exact same position, and it's going to trip you out because you're going to start giving them some advice just based on your experience. And then it's going to make you reflect back on your life and go, man, things have changed. Holy shit. I'm giving people advice right now. Like, friends are calling me for advice about things. Like, I was the person that they didn't even want to be around nor talk to for years. It's a trip, man.
The beautiful thing about AA is that I walked in there saying, I'm not like any of these guys or girls. They're all different than me. Ah, yeah. And then you go in there and you start reading through the stories in the back of the book when you go to the book meetings, and you start sitting there going, I haven't heard anything yet that isn't me.
Yeah.
Like, you literally sit there and, like, every story you're like, yeah, I did that, I did that, I did that, I did that. You're like, holy shit, like, this is the only place I belong. Like, it's either this or dead, and I'll choose this all day long, because at least I'm learning about myself. Like the things, like, the what is it, the river of denial is one of my favorite stories in the big book, because it's a person that had a normal life, and didn't think they had a problem. 10 DUIs later or whatever it was, oh, I might have a problem. Like,
Yeah.
light went off, and I think that's the beautiful thing about AA, is if you find a good meeting, which there's some shitty ones out there.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
be honest,
Oh, yeah.
nobody's perfect. There's some meetings where you go and they want to sit there and try to tell you how to do your steps. And, I bucked the system a little bit. Like, I didn't do step 4 the way AA wants you to do step 4. My step 4 was writing my shit down, giving it to my roommate in rehab, and having him read it and say, ask me questions, and then asking for forgiveness for all my sins. That was my 4th step. There's a big way to do it, and guess what? This guy doesn't know, because he didn't do it that way. You know, but you catch some shit in AA if you do things in certain meetings that are outside the realm of their normal. So I think, for me, like, I had to find a meeting where I could be who I was all the time. And I think that's life in general. Like, I'm finally in a relationship where I get to be me all the time, whether I'm pissed off or bitching and pissing and moaning or happy. Like, I'm me all the time. There's no longer putting up that persona for everybody else to look at that says, oh, Mark's got his shit together. You know, not that anybody could see through that or anything, but, you know, it's nice to like go through the process of AA and the 12 steps and look back on it and go, yeah, like this shit works. Like this is a crazy program that wants you to do what normal people do on a daily basis. Treat people
Yeah.
nicely. Don't be a dickhead. Do the best thing. Apologize when you do something wrong. Take an accountability check of yourself every single day and be grateful for what you have. I mean, how can you go wrong with a system like that?
And it's funny too because there's so many people that just hate it. There's so many people that if I make a video about just my experience with 12 step stuff, oh man, dude, people are just all over it. But the thing is funny is I just don't understand what gets people so bothered about it. It's like whatever you're doing to stay sober, man, that's amazing. Like
Yeah.
keep doing it. That is super cool. I hope your life is going better. I hope you have good things down the road. I have no ill will against you. I don't think you should be doing AA. I don't even necessarily want you to come do AA. You do what you need to do, you know?
Yeah. Like it's crazy, um, there's meetings where people get up, my name's so and so. My last date of drinking was 27 years ago on this date. And I'm like, okay, if you got to tell yourself that every day, cool. Do your thing. But I'm up there, it's like I'll never be the guy that says my sobriety date was on this because guess what? That's my little holiday. That's my little moment of success and growth. I'm keeping that to myself. Like I don't count days anymore. I never look at the days anymore. First fucking year, I looked at the days every day. It's like, okay, it's one day more than yesterday. Like you can't do the math,
And how
you know?
slow did it go?
Yeah, it's like 700 some days or some shit now. I don't even know. But, I think the one downfall I see about AA in my experience is that if you go to a group that doesn't fit your personality, you're not going to get out of it what you could.
Yep.
I mean,
I,
that's it. You just got to find one that accepts you for who you are, and you find the people that you enjoy being around. And you know, I think picking the right meeting is finding a meeting where you find the right people. The people that you want to listen to, and the people that give you that vibe that like they understand you 100% and are there for you, no matter how you do it. Because it is a how do they put it? It is a suggested plan of recovery. Suggested. Just my opinion is as long as you do the steps any way, shape, or form, you're better off than you were yesterday. What about
it,
you?
I've never found someone that started the process, the 12-step process, and started to get involved and started to meet people and show up consistently and had a little bit more accountability and their life started to change. I've never met someone whose life just went downhill because of attempting that process. Now, don't get me wrong. I've heard some people that go in and they meet some really shitty people that were
Hmm.
untreated alcoholics in AA that did something to take advantage of them or told people about one of their private fourth steps or fifth, stuff like that. So I've heard individuals that have affected people negatively in AA. But as far as someone attempting the whole process of trying to have that spiritual awakening and that different outlook towards life that comes from working the steps, I just don't see that going wrong. Maybe you just think, hey, I didn't enjoy that. I thought it was bullshit. And whatever. That's on you. But I don't think there's anything negative from attempting it, at least.
Yeah, I mean, the people that do it and just kind of like pretend. I mean, yeah, you're not going to get anything out of this. It's just fucking plain and simple. If you don't take it seriously and you don't really think about what you're doing, because you know those steps are a deep self introspection, finding out who you are as a person, why you do the things you do, and how you can change that. Like that's what it is. I mean, it's literally you know diving into who you are as a person and finding your flaws and identifying your flaws and understanding why you do these things and then trying to fix it and do things better from that point on. We've said it before, the 12 steps could be used for anybody. If anybody on the street goes into a 12 step meeting and actually like looks at it and reads it and tries to push that forward in their lives, it's going to make a difference for the positive. How can it not? It's a system built on knowing who you are, knowing your faults, and trying to get out of your own way.
And figuring out, and I love that you talk about knowing your own faults. For so many years, I thought what was going on with me was just alcohol or just substances. That's it. If I just put that stuff down, I will be good to go. Suddenly I put that stuff down. I was not good to go. I was not right mentally. I was not feeling good. I was not handling life well. It was a rude awakening of, damn, man, there's more going on to this. And I had so many resentments towards people that eventually, through the process and the 12-step process, I started to realize I hated some people for doing things that I did to other people. And I
Hmm.
realized, like, wow, I'm a hypocrite in these areas of life. And then I started to realize, damn, man, I've had 5 or 6 shitty, drama filled, argumentative, terrible negative relationships. And I used to point my finger at all of them all the time. And I started to realize through the 12-step process, oh shit, there's flaws about me that are putting me in situations where I'm getting the same outcome and then blaming people for a situation that I found myself. I just started to tie up all these loose ends and I started to connect different dots and I started to realize basically, oh, this isn't only about the substance. Like there's things going on with me that are causing me problems and making me start to reach for the substance as well.
And I think that's probably a large portion of addicts and alcoholics is that, the addiction is a symptom of something worse that's going on inside. It's a symptom of something that's not firing right, or some operating system that's got a glitch. For me, it was I was in fight or flight 24/7. I was depressed and I had PTSD and anxiety. Like, okay, I know what it is now. I can work on it. And I think that's the key uh, to finding a good treatment center, is to find a place that is going to offer things. Don't just go to rehab because somebody says they had a good time. If they had a good time at rehab, they probably went to the wrong place. Because rehab is not fun. There can be moments that are memorable and that you'll remember for the rest of your life for a good reason. But I think, if you're out there and you're taking that step towards treatment, look into multiple treatment centers. If you got to go, go. Like, get on the bus, get on the train, get on the plane and go. But if you have some time to figure out where you want to go, do the research. And I highly suggest finding places that have neurotherapy or EMDR or ART therapy, which are all great for trauma. Because if you got trauma, they help you deal with it. But yeah, I mean, that's about all I got.
Yeah, man. I just want to ask you. I would know we've been on here for a while. What is next for you? You got your new house. You moved in. You got the whole setup. You got the lighting. You got the badass screen in the background, man. What is next for you in the kind of maybe a little bit of sobriety answer and then a little bit of podcast answer?
Well, sobriety, like you, I'm going to keep cooking up that recipe that works for me. I'm going to keep putting my best foot forward, making good decisions, and holding myself accountable. Uh, I'm going to continue to enjoy waking up. I think that's big. I'm going to enjoy waking up and being grateful to be alive every day. Going to do some work around the house. Going to make this place a little bit more valuable so I can sell it. Some big plans I'll tell you off the air about, because it's not happened yet. But something really good, big is going to happen in my life soon. Podcast wise, I am going to be reaching out to so many people on social media to try to make new friends and make new acquaintances, people to get together with and collaborate with, and hear and grow as a person, through new interactions with new people. I think you were the start of that, and I'm grateful that we hooked up, because I love doing this with you. I love having this show with you. Um, and yeah, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Year two's coming up and I'm going to start working towards year three.
Yeah, man, and I'm kind of the same way. I'm reaching out to people. I think that seems to be the way to do it, and that seems to be a common theme and just positive things that go on in life: connections, relationships with people, support, things that you have in common, mixing ideas, collaboration, finding a way. Hey, look, you've changed your life and you're doing really well. I've changed my life. Things are getting better in my life. Let's team up. Let's spread the positivity. There's room. There's a ton of podcasts, man. There's a lot of competition, fierce competition. But I think at the end of the day, there's enough room for everyone in this little sphere to continue to live a good life and to grow.
I agree. I'm competitive as hell, but I'm all about helping others as well. Like, I want to see you grow. I want to see, Scotty G grow. Anybody I do an episode with, I want to see them succeed as well as myself. And I think that's the cool thing about the movement in podcasting right now with people that are doing what we're doing, is that we're not, granted, we want to succeed. Yeah. But part of that success is by reaching and helping others, and helping other people get seen and get their message get out there. Because at the end of the day, we're all trying to put out a different message. very similar message. It's, but we're all trying to get a message out there. And by forming these relationships and being present every day, and allowing yourself to take in what other people have to say and what other people are doing, and realize that they're not trying to take you out. They're just doing their thing, and I think over time, I think you're going to be very successful because you got a great podcast. I'm hoping is to do the same here, but I'm just going to keep pushing forward and keep trying to make new connections. And I think I'm going to try to make it down to a podcast convention this year, hopefully.
Nice, man. That'll be fun, dude. I've never been to one. I mean, that's a great way to connect. It's a great way to
Yeah, I
get
mean,
out there, get your name out there. Hey, make some business cards, hand that shit out. Dude,
I
listen.
have about 1,500 business cards that are just sitting here right now.
Oh, you do?
I'm actually toying around with the idea of coming out with some clothes, but that's on the back burner.
Hey, man, just keep doing what you're doing, bro.
You too, brother. I can't wait till we get together again.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you. Hey, guys, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Me and Mark have always called this the sober roundtable. We connect everyone, and we connected our two podcasts, and we just go at it with different topics, and it's been fun. We've been trying to do it once a month. Who knows? It's a good time. So we just I just want to say thank you guys to anyone that has listened into
Thank
this.
you very much. And there's a link on my website to the Sober Fix podcast. So go ahead and click on the link. If you're on my website, you go right to Drew's site.
Let's go. Get on Mark's site. Check out Mark's site. When you're done with that, click on my site from his site, and let's do this. Thanks, Mark.
All right, guys. Thank you.